So a lot of you guys asked questions when RSVPing to this event, and so I'm just gonna read off a couple of those questions. I don't know if we'll have time to get to all of them, but this one I really loved. The question is, I'd love to hear the thoughts around the overwhelming amount of people diagnosing themselves on social media without a licensed professional. What are our thoughts on this? Anybody want to take this?
That was real good.
So,
It's good that there's curiosity, that there is an openness to try and understand yourself. But ultimately, so many things can look like something else. So many diagnoses can be on the same spectrum, which is why AI cannot replace us. Go to a therapist to get a diagnosis. And also, sometimes you don't really need a diagnosis. Like everything does not have to be pathologized. Like, let's just understand the functioning of some of those survival strategies, and let's just work on coping instead of just tacking a label on. The label offers a framework or an understanding, but there's so much underneath that that a word just doesn't, suffice.
I'll take it in a second.
do you guys find that there's ever times where diagnosis can be harmful for clients?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
So again, like Paris said, I think labeling is just not a good way to go about treatment approaches. I think a lot of the insurance companies want these labels, and we're living in like this, what do you call it, capitalistic society where labels are just what gets everybody paid. I always, in my practice, I have a sliding scale, so I take money, hard cash. I work for $40 if you, look, I'll do it for everybody because I like access to care to be there. That doesn't require diagnosis. It doesn't require these labels. And I also think it's very trendy to go with these labels. When we talk about TikTok and things that are short-formed, attention-based communication, people on TikTok tend to, or people just in general on social media tend to have these labels, and it sounds buzzworthy and sounds trendy right now. And it also opens doors for other people that aren't professionals to get into the realm of mental health. I know we talked about, well, I tend to be perpendicular in these type of conversations, but some questions about credentials with like a Dr. Cheyenne Bryan, right? Who was very, who says a lot of great things, right? Says a lot of great things, but she also says a lot of harmful things. Yeah. And like Brianna said, and all of our professionals, holding someone to an ethical standard is really important. The degrees does matter. The credentials does matter. A person that knows what they're doing matters. So just want to be careful. We have these people that are public speakers, and you just want to be careful with the information you get from them, and also when it pertains to the labels and diagnosis.
So I'm gonna be honest, I work at a full-time school. You don't know how many times I've heard people say, "Oh, I think you got ADHD." Oh, I said, "Hold, slow your roll." Respectfully, you're not a mental health. You don't have the background, you don't have the credentials to diagnose, to tell somebody what their diagnosis is. I've also had clients came to me that said, "Oh, my cousin said you got this diagnosis." I said, "Excuse me, I mean, your cousin, before your cousin can't diagnose you for a mental health diagnosis because they don't have the background and credentials to do so." So it's very dangerous when other people diagnose people, especially if they don't do the work, they don't have the credentials to follow them to be able to. I say it's really, the problem is it is pressure from the even PRP. I've had clients that, came to me from a outpatient mental health clinic and said, "Oh, in order to do PRP, they trying to push me to do PRP, and I'm in therapy with this person at the previous place they was at before they switched over. They said, I don't want to do PRP. And so what I found out from my experience at the time with PRP is they want you to have a certain diagnosis. So what happens is they are misdiagnosing people with certain diagnoses that don't have it so they can have PRP. And if it's not accurate, it's dangerous. So definitely, basically what I would say is, really, I say, you got to be careful with those things because you can misdiagnose things. I agree that things do look similar. So you want to definitely have it from someone who has the background, but also don't be so fixated on a diagnosis. It will, everything will come together, just because basically it's all about, therapists are learning, You don't know the person from before they start with you. Like even a phone call, I had a client before they started me say, "Oh, can you see if I got bipolar?" And I'm like, hold on, we haven't met, we haven't had any, session yet. So let me really get to that point before I make any type of determination, because I don't really, I haven't started with you yet. Mm-hmm. So it can be very dangerous across the board.
Right. I'll say something. I was looking at this from two different angles. One angle was no one likes uncertainty. Mm-hmm. I need an answer. What's going on? So that's why I think a lot of people are trying to label themselves or go on and do that because they don't have time to wait for no therapist appointment to figure this out, right? So let me just go ahead and do it myself. And that is very dangerous. But I think it's just because I understand why they're doing it. It's because they need an answer. I need to understand my problems, why I'm doing it. And once I have the answer, I can relax, like, okay. Right. So it's getting that pressure off of themselves, having to deal with something and they don't know why it's happening is a huge, it's just a lot for them. That's one angle. The other one was every black woman that I have, they don't want to be labeled. Depression. As soon as I get to that area, it's all right, girl, I don't like that, So I come across a lot of black women and black girls that they start checking out when you start talking that, in the book and stuff. So I have to, every session or every intake, I have to always say, hey, I'm not going to label. This ain't about that. We're just trying to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And I have to always go that route. And then that's when they kind of trust, But I notice that they do not like that D word. Mm-hmm. They don't like to be informed that they have depression. They don't like to be informed that they have a problem. But we do. But we just, we're not going to label it, right? So I think that was another thing, too. Third, historically, I had researched that the first psychiatric hospitalization for black people was in Richmond, Virginia. In that research, it was very sad to read that, but said, oh, that's where that comes from. That's why we don't want to, go to therapy. That's why we don't want to heal, because they automatically thought we were crazy at the beginning of time. Right? Putting us in huge psychiatric hospitalizations just because. So we have to understand the historic, going back to history, of where this all begun and why it begun and why we, are very, desensitized to that in our homes and in our lives. But overall, yeah, I will honestly say, just two different angles on that. But I truly believe that the main issue, and I always would say this, is the cultural misorientation. I can't go away from it. You're going to be tired of hearing me saying it. But that is the reason why we are dealing with this problem. It's us not having an understanding of who we are as a people and why, and also not knowing the history of America, understanding what we have been through, right? So all of that gets lost. So when they come here, it's very individualized, right? And I understand we all going through individual things, but collectively, right, we're all dealing with the same problem. So, yeah.
I think, even when it comes to, our DSM-5, I think the way that depression shows up in our community looks a lot differently than what might be, textbook showing up in our DSM-5. So there's that too. And that, you know, we could get into a whole nother conversation about that. But I'm going to ask this next question. The question is, how influenced are kids by the traumas that their parents may have experienced that their parents don't address by going to therapy themselves, and how much of it ends up being passed down to their kids? And so I had a question earlier. We didn't get to it because, again, you know, just trying to get a lot of information into a 2-hour time span, but about epigenetics and just about, I just had a brain fart, I'm sorry, about epigenetics. And so to you guys, how influenced do you think that kids are by the traumas that their parents may have experienced? And that they're not necessarily addressing by going to therapy themselves. How much of it ends up being passed down?
I think that's such an individual question too, right? Because it depends on what the trauma is, what hasn't been addressed. But trauma, it's almost like, I think we can liken it to grief in a way, because if you've experienced grief, you know that it doesn't actually ever go away, right? It just depends on how you navigate with the grief. Sometimes it feels all-consuming. Sometimes it feels like a low tide. Sometimes it feels like a high tide. And you're just kind of riding the waves of grief. And trauma can do the same thing if it is unaddressed, right? Is how are you functioning around it? It's not going to go away because you've experienced it. But how are you navigating it? What is the environment that is being created because of the trauma that you've experienced? So for that parent, if they've gone through traumas, depending on what specifically it is there and it's showing up. It's just, how are you riding that wave? And if there's other people in the sea with you, they hitting the same waves, right? So it is really a matter of recognizing what the trauma is, how you're functioning, and what's the environment that's being created, the tide that's being created because of the trauma. So, you have something?
A little something. I think that the work of Dr. Joy DeGruy, she does post-traumatic slave syndrome, how epigenetics and how trauma can be passed intergenerationally. I think treatment modalities have to come not cookie cutter approach. There should be an epistemological way of approaching there, meaning your own way, to what trauma that particular individual has. So I do agree with Aaliyah. You don't go with a cookie cutter approach, and understanding that historically trauma can be passed down intergenerational.
So I guess I would ask you guys this question, as it pertains to just patterns in our community. If we see, as a young person maybe, if we see maybe a pattern in our own families or our own communities, and we want to do better, what stops us from doing better? What stops us from perpetuating those patterns?
I'm gonna be honest with you, fear of change. Because if you used to something, you became accustomed to whether an unhealthy relationship, whether it could be a lot of things that if you're familiar with it, that's what you know. That's what you're gonna stay stuck on, and it's hard to shift from that. For many different reasons. One of the reasons is the fear, not only the fear of change, but also how. How can I get from this point to the next point so I don't continue to be impacted the way I've been impacted as it is. So that's another thing where people are scared to make the change and don't know how. Also, another thing is surroundings. Your surroundings, like who is in your circle, who is around you. If you are around people that are negative around you, that's what you're gonna be familiar with, and that's what you're gonna know. It's just like I had to move away from work environment because honestly, I see a pattern. I say I'm gonna be honest. I want to elevate. I don't want to stay stuck in the same boat. And then when you get tired of being tired, you're gonna want to change. It takes work to get there, and it's not something overnight. But that's what I would say to the reason why it's hard to just even get out of that cycle because it became the norm for so long.
Yeah, that's change is hard. Change is hard. I think here, when it comes down to, we're looking at addictions. Addictions doesn't have to necessarily be alcohol. It can be addiction to a feeling, right? Even with alcohol, it's still a feeling. I don't want to feel it, right? I want to feel good. So I think when you've been so accustomed to feeling good or addicted to some type of feeling that has a relief, you'll continue to do it. And then we have addiction to pain. I'm used to getting beaten up. That's just what it is, right? I'm used to this. I'm used to that, right? So we're looking at this form of attachment to these things, whether pain, right? And just this is my self-worth. This is the only level, right? And if that's the world that you've been living in for 30 years, 20 years, you don't know how to, I don't expect for you to do something different. Right? That's years of doing the same thing. And you have told yourself that story. You have evidence for that story. So when clients come to me, those have been the biggest hurdles dealing with how deep, they are attached, right, to dysfunction or attached to a certain addiction, right? And honestly, I realized, and this was an actual win last week, I realized they don't have any evidence, no receipts to do different. Right? If all I know is mistreatment, I don't know what treatment feels like. So that's where exposure, right, come in and, doing something small, right? And then not only that, awareness. Oh my God. I didn't even know I was in that world doing all, right? So it's just so many levels to that. And it is hard. I have to admit it. It makes me feel very sad to know that, it is really hard for individuals in our Black community to be able to change. But that is one question. I even set up a school system for women who were depressed. And I got lots of comments, lots of sign me up, but only one came. Let's talk about that, right? Let's talk about me spending late nights, tired, while still coming to work, trying to thinking of ways to make change easier. And I realized I don't think I can for someone, right? I'm not going to be able to make it easier for my women and my girls to heal. They may have to miss this boat. And that is hard.
Anybody else? You guys good? How do you maneuver feeling like you are underaccomplished in your career and life? Anybody?
I can talk about the past experience, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure.
I can't say I feel underaccomplished right now. What I will say is at one point I did feel it, and that's because I had the pressure of being the first to not only got a bachelor's degree in my family, but also a master's degree. That's pressure right there. The other thing is, I'll be honest, I had grew up, my upbringing, which I don't talk about all the time, I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to speak till I was 5 years old because my mother spoke to me in Korean. Also, too, not knowing what feelings were, not knowing how to express feelings. That was a challenge for me in the past, many, many years ago. So when you go through all of those things, you're in this situation, myself, where, you have to work harder in school. Because I didn't know about accommodations, nothing when I was growing up. Could I have benefited from it? Absolutely. Yes. I didn't know anything about it. They don't tell you. I learned that when I started working in school myself. I tell people because that's the right thing to do. You're supposed to tell people their how they can benefit from accommodations, how much of a difference this can make. I worked in one school. They said, "Oh, you're not supposed to tell the parent that." Says who? It's not. That's just y'all policy, but this is not the policy. Really, it's just your own thing. And also, too, that's not right to not tell or inform people of their rights. You're supposed to tell them. Because that way they know if they don't take the step after the information, then, you did your part. Now, with me, I've had all this pressure throughout life. I go, master's degree, got it. Went through bachelor's degree, had to work harder. Master's degree, I didn't even think I was going to make it there. So now they tell you, oh, you're not a social worker yet. Yes, you got a social degree, but you need a licensure. Oh, that's a whole different thing. So, licensure, what? So I had to go sit for this test. Yes, it was a struggle. Because you're trying, you get frustrated. Almost gave up, I'm gonna be honest. Almost gave up on the whole field, really, because of it. Because, yes, you have to have credentials. I get that. Absolutely. But I have never understood why this kept happening. So at one point I questioned because of the whole standard in my upbringing and my background, I felt I wasn't accomplishing. I was stuck working in child welfare, working late night hours. I felt stuck. Until I started connecting with the right people that really gave me the tools and the information that I was supposed to have many, many years ago that I didn't know about. And so it took some time, it took some work, late nights and all of those things to really finally get to where I'm at now after many years of work and the pressure. So that's what made me feel because I was still stuck in this child welfare. I didn't want to do it anymore. I ain't had no choice at the time because, and really I did do some, I had to do case management because I can't practice as a social worker. I got the there was LGSW. They changed to LMSW. So once I got the the OG at the time, I'm in child welfare. I'm doing this work late night. Feeling like I didn't have a life. You working those late hours. I got tired. Yeah, at one point it impacted my health, yes. So I said, I can't go through this anymore. So I had to shift my focus, connected to the right person again, people. And I got there. Got my clinical license. So I don't have to look back no more in child welfare. Right. And that's when I found out that I was going to be an aunt. And I want to be home to see my niece. Right. I don't want to be out there late nights, going to people's houses. Mm-hmm. And I had one real life situation. I'll tell you this real quick. But I remember working in D.C., and a lady, it was late night. I had to go out in the field because I was on call. This true story. A lady was about to walk to my car. I'm in survival mode. I drove off because I don't know what she's going to do with me. I don't even know if that was going to be the last day. That was there. I said, enough is enough. I want to be here for my niece. Wow. I want to be here for my family. And I want to be able to have try to have a much balanced life. So at one point, I didn't feel fulfilled. So I made the shifts to get there.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to follow it. This might lead into what you were about to say, but one last question just to wrap this up, you guys. I am really proud of each of you and just that you each have your own thing kind of going for you. You've branched out and become independent in some way, shape, or form. And so for people in our field that have not had the courage to take that step yet, or even outside of our field. Like this person that asked the question, feeling underdeveloped in their career, what was it that got you to take that leap into, really get into what you might consider your purpose?
That's a great question. And I think there's a myth that when you take a leap, you're not scared. And I'm sure I can speak for everybody that we've all been scared. We're still doing. There's some people that are on this stage that are scared to even be on this stage, but are still doing it. So if I could offer anything, it is just to know that the fear. Again, you do it with the fear, right? And for me, to step into purpose work, I had to develop a trust within myself. Right? Like trusting myself that if it doesn't work out, I will figure out something else. Trusting myself that I will be honest of, all right, things are getting a little shaky. What is the next thing that I have to do? And trusting that I'm going to take care of myself either way, no matter what happens. And I'll be scared and I'll be anxious and I'll be worried, but we still going to do it. So
I would say, to piggyback off that, absolutely, there was a lot of fear and was, yes, just moving with the fear. But personally, before the fear, I was angry. I was so angry. I was so resentful. I was so unhappy with where I was. And it took, I would say, accountability. Like, I love freedom and autonomy, but the flip side of that is accountability. Nobody was coming to save me. I had to look in the mirror and say, like, if you're angry, do something about it. Piss or get off the pot. And that's why I'm a big fan of anger, because it was a motivating, like it propelled me to, like, it didn't matter how scared I was angrier than anything. So all I was seeing was red, and it was just like, here's the resignation letter. Let me go ahead and step into my purpose. So it was worth it. Yeah.
Good stuff. I think this is two parts for me, but we all have imposter syndrome, right? I had a mentor say, whatever table you sit around, you belong. You need to go with that attitude. Just go in there, you belong around that table. I also had the pleasure of meeting someone who told me to value process, right? I've never been a person that majored in minor things. The details was like, why I gotta pay? I was a big picture thinker. My ex-girlfriend used to say that. She used to be like real detailed. I'm like, all right, what's the big picture? I'm reading a book called 10 Times is Better Than 2 by Dan Sullivan. It's an entrepreneur book. And basically the footnotes is that shoot for the stars, right? Go 10 times, not 2. We tend to think like, okay, if I double my impact, double my income, double my influence, then I would just be this great person. He's suggesting that, hey, do it 10 times. So if you have $100,000 goal, why not have $1 million goal? In that book, he talks about the gap in the game, right? And some of us stay in the gap. The gap is a mindset of measuring where we should be versus where we came from. He makes a whole bunch of analogies. 2 of them I can think of is, imagine you're in the desert and you see a mirage and you're trying to get to that mirage. You'll never get to it because it's passing you by, right? So paying attention to the things that are passing you by. He talks about his children, where his children and his wife is cooking a meal and they come to dinner and the wife is saying it's lasagna and they're huffing and puffing like, oh my God, it's lasagna again? They undervalued the process of what it took for her to make the lasagna, like how to lay out the dishes. It's just them not paying attention to details. So I'm trying not to be in the gap. I think that understanding processes is important. And I think it really gives me value to know that I need to be in the game. Always take that Sankofa, right? Being able to move my feet forward, but never forgetting what happened in my past. And sometimes you got to go back and retrieve, right? And get something that was really important to make you move forward.
Final thoughts?
Yeah, final thoughts. Ooh, this may be a little too personal,
Out here.
but I'll go ahead and share. I realized that I love short-term gratification. And I realized that I don't like staying in uncomfortability. So I try to solve things overnight. Because I don't want to feel this no more. I don't want to be at this job. So let me come up with an idea. Let me come up with this, right? So many ideas and so many projects to get out of my process. Don't like process. But in process, we learn character development. I don't want character development. And I'm very proud of the woman that I am today. And I knew that I needed to learn how to go through A through Z and not skip over the letters, right, to get to the end. And with that, allow for me to move here to Richmond. Well, we're not in Richmond today, but to move to Richmond allowed for me to do that. I had failed my test 4 times. And it's not that I couldn't pass. It's that my mind was thinking about what? Another cut. I can do this. I don't have time to study, you know, it's too much. Low pay, I need pay now. Forget this. And I realized, like, wow, Clarissa, this is how we've been moving in life. I can't move like this with my girls. They need stability. Can't keep going over these ideas and projects and just move, right? And that's when I had to change. And I said, I'm gonna sit down, I'm gonna study this test, and I'm gonna do it right. I'm gonna invest, and I'm gonna pass. Mind you, I did that homeless. Yes, 7 months. Wow, this is my first time sharing that publicly. 7 months. Those were the longest 7 months of my life with 2 kids. I say that to say I had to be at the lowest form to where I couldn't skip a process. So it got me. You can't skip it today. You actually got to go through, and you got to go through with faith. You got to go through with failure and fear of the unknown. And I didn't know what state it was going to be, to be honest, y'all. But Richmond came up. I didn't know if I was going to pass the test. We was going to probably have to stay here a little bit longer and deal with the homelessness, right? But I passed, right? Wow. That is the most hugest thing for me, is to actually get it. But sometimes you got to go through the low and be stripped, right, to get character development. So now, why did I need to go through that? I don't question it. I needed it. We take medicine we don't like, but we need it, right? And that part there allowed for me to show up differently in my sessions, because now I have wisdom, right? Now I have character development. And when we talk about success, it's hard. This is the last thing. It's hard to measure success to these metrics that we live in. What am I chasing? What am I doing? I realize all my years has all been chasing things, letters, credentials, degrees, right? And first of all, I was chasing it for validation of my family, because they don't know how to love. Their way of loving is like, let me see. You can't do it. Oh, yes, I can. That's where that anger comes. That anger helped me get here today. And I came to a point where I was just like, forget you, America. Forget you, family. Clarissa, what do you want? I made it through many, and that was just one area. But I made it through many levels to now sit here today and say success for me is living, being present, right? Just living and being present. But most importantly, community, healing, that's my love. And that's why I do the work that I do. But overall, I want to tell you thank you for allowing me to be here today and to sit among my other peers. And thank you guys for allowing me to share my wisdom, and share my thoughts and my passions today. But overall, I just want to just say thank you.
Okay, we are going to wrap this up. I really appreciate you guys for coming out. This started as an idea in my head, and so to see everybody sitting here and to see you guys on the panel with me today is really exciting for me. It's really, like I said, it's humbling, and I'm very honored. You guys had some great input today. I really appreciate it. I hope that you guys go home with something that you didn't come in here with. I thank you all for being here tonight, and have some more drinks, eat some more food.